Terrence Bates here with your Real America's Voice news break. So good to have you along for the ride. You're looking at a live picture of Washington, D.C., specifically the White House, as President Trump is waiting to receive the Prime Minister of Korea. The two are going to hold bilateral talks there. You have to imagine that the situation with North Korea is one of the things that will come up, but more importantly, trade will likely come up and tariffs between the two countries. Again, at any moment now, we're expecting the Prime Minister to arrive here at the White House, and President President Trump will receive him. The two will have talks, and then the two will open up with the media there in the Oval Office. We, of course, will have live coverage for you the moment that happens. In the meantime, there's lots of buzz this morning about President Trump potentially deploying National Guard troops to Democrat-led cities like Chicago, Baltimore, and New York. Guardsmen currently on duty in the nation's capital also ramping up their posture. The Joint Task Force over the federal effort to secure Washington, D.C. confirms that some of the military units on the streets of D.C. are now carrying either handguns or in some cases rifles. In a statement, the task force said the military's rules say that force should only be used, quote, as a last resort and solely in response to an imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm. Thousands of National Guard and federal law enforcement officers are now patrolling the streets of the nation's capital. On Friday, the commander-in-chief told reporters he thinks Chicago will be next and then possibly New York. Just a couple of moments ago in the Oval Office, Vice President J.D. Vance also talking about the importance of patrolling the nation's capital and some of what's happened over the last more than week and a half.
Local law enforcement told me, sir, that in the past 20 or 30 years, D.C. has averaged a murder every other day. That's, 200 murders a year, 150, 250, but about every other day a person has been killed on the streets of Washington, D.C. We've been doing this for 2 weeks. 0 people killed. That's real lives saved that the media and, frankly, the entire Democratic Party should be saying, thank you for saving lives instead of attacking the President of the United States for doing so.
You should get over that quickly.
One brainwashed radical at a time.
That's enough.
It's the Charlie Kirk Show.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us, as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. Let me tell you guys about one of our partners here. What do we have, guys? Hillsdale College. Go to charlieforhillsdale.com. That's CHARLIE for Hillsdale.com. You guys have got to check it out, charlieforhillsdale.com. Hillsdale College is America's greatest college, and you guys should be able to learn like the experts. They have a phenomenal new course out there all about totalitarian novels. They have an Aristotle course. They have a Roman history course. They have a world history course. They have a Federalist paper course. They have a Constitution course. They have an American founding course, and so much more. Go to charlieforhillsdale.com. That is charlieforhillsdale.com, CHARLIE for Hillsdale.com. charlieforhillsdale.com is a phenomenal way to be able to learn, and you guys can go deep into history, economics, the great works of literature. So check it out right now, charlieforhillsdale.com. That is charlieforhillsdale.com. Email us, as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. Joining us now is Jeremy Carl, author of Unprotected Class, How Anti-White Racism is Tearing America Apart. Jeremy, I want to broaden the discussion that is currently happening largely online and somewhat on television around student visas. I believe, and I've talked to some people in the administration, I believe there's going to be some clarifying elements of what's happening with the Chinese visas. Also, we can't weigh in too much about this because President Trump is in the midst of a massive, a geopolitical change or trade deal. So there's a give and there's a take. So I haven't really weighed in on much of it. But instead what I want to do, Jeremy, is I want to broaden it and just come up with a way that we should think about student visas, right? President Trump has both of our confidence. He's going to crush it. Let's not, look at the day-to-day back and forth riffraff. Let's take a, more macro picture. Let's go through the essence of it. How many people are foreigners that are coming into our schools and that are learning our universities? Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And how should we think about student visas altogether?
Yeah, Charlie. And by the way, I just want to echo your comments, which is I understand why people online are going to they're going to freak out and say, oh, he said 600,000. And you sort of wonder if these people ever watched Trump negotiate before and, get fooled for the 50,000th time.
Exactly. This is all part of negotiation. So let's not, I support him completely. But let's talk about more conceptually. Please keep going.
Yeah, so conceptually, I think we've got something on the order of 1 million foreigners studying in the U.S. right now. I think there are clearly some advantages. There's particular advantages to the universities. Now, that may be positive or negative depending on how you think of universities, because these are generally people who are paying full freight. So in some sense, they are subsidizing being able to offer scholarships to American students. On the other hand, they are sometimes crowding American students, particularly in technology, out of these top programs, particularly in graduate school. And so that's a real problem. And then there's also the security element. And I can tell you, when I was a doctoral student at Stanford, we paid a lot of attention to places where we did not want Chinese graduate students studying because we felt it was a security risk. So this is a thing that really does get worried about, and it should be worried about.
So yeah, let's differentiate this for a second. So what would you say is the difference between the graduate and the undergraduate designation? Does that matter as we're talking about foreign visas?
Yeah, Charlie, I think it absolutely does. So, I think undergraduate, you're going to have a much sort of wider variation in student quality, and it also kind of matters less because with rare cases, there's not going to be anybody involved in really cutting edge research. When you get to a graduate school, particularly a doctoral program, particularly at some of these top programs, you're talking about people who are really working on often very, very cutting edge work. In many cases, the faculty member, if it's a doctoral program, may be only lightly supervising it, and the real cutting edge work is being done by the student. Now, if they're bringing that work and it's staying in the US, that's great. If they're going and they're stealing our intellectual property from other students, from professors, whatever else, and reporting on that to the Chinese Communist Party or whatever our geopolitical rival is, obviously that's a big problem.
Right. So let's just go a step deeper into this. So the Chinese question is one presented as one issue, but it's really three issues. At the most basic level, we have Chinese who come to America for basic undergraduate degrees. We know that. Now, there's two ways to frame it. You could say that it's offsetting our trade deficit with China. They sell us manufactured goods and we sell them papered degrees. However, another way to look at it is that we're importing foreigners to prop up a failed business model. How reliant are these universities on foreign Chinese purchasers of degrees?
Charlie, it varies from university to university, but there's no question that a number of our universities are very reliant, not just on Chinese degrees, but we're seeing this a lot from India, which is the other really big supplier of foreign students, not as much of a security threat, but a country that we certainly do need to pay attention to intellectual property there. So, we do have that. But Charlie, again, you kind of started your career even attacking the university business model for good reason. And I think that we would be better off in the grand scheme of things if we let more of these schools fail, because, again, they can only be propped up by foreign students, in some cases looking for that U.S. prestige. And I don't think that really serves American interests pretty well, particularly considering how woke a lot of these universities have become. So, there's no simple and clean answer, but I think that's broadly how I'd think about it.
Yeah. So let me ask you, and I think I know the answer. Why does Xi Jinping care so much about this issue? You would think that when you're negotiating a trade deal, which is what's happening right now, Xi Jinping would be worrying about imports or exports, or hey, don't go to Taiwan, or making sure that we have control over the South China Sea. But instead, a top priority is student visas. Here's how I interpret that. Some people say, oh, it's international espionage, they're spying on us. There's probably some truth to that. You can't trust the Chinese. The second of which people say, well, they're training for that they can replace us and they're getting valuable intellectual capital. The third of which I actually think is a little bit more benign is that I believe he's getting a lot of internal pressure from Chinese oligarchs that want their kids to be able to go to U.S. universities so that they can stay domestically competitive in the CCP rat race.
Yeah.
What do you think of that analysis, Jeremy?
Charlie, I think it's actually very insightful. I think both there's the practical element of they want that U.S. brand degree for the CCP rat race. I think there's also sort of sentimental reasons and prestige reasons around the same thing. She's daughter, this was kind of not widely reported because she studied under a pseudonym, is actually a Harvard graduate. And for a long time, the Chinese Communist Party, some of the top leaders have been sending their kids here to the U.S. I think there's some positives and negatives of that. I mean, obviously, we can affect what they think in terms of culture, and hopefully they come away with a little bit more positive view of the U.S., but there's obviously also some risks associated with that. But I think that, yes, it's the rat race, and it's also this sort of soft prestige and maybe even some sentimental value. I mean, again, she has one child. That child studied in the U.S., and so this sort of thing may be a little bit personal for him.
Yeah, so and by the way, Chinese universities are quickly rising in prestige very, very quickly. Yeah. And so the president, he's negotiating this massive, huge trade deal. This was Howard Lutnick's explanation on Laura Ingram's yesterday. I know Howard, he's a friend of mine. I don't think I agree with him here. Let's play cut 320.
Allowing 600,000 students from the communist country of China, putting America first.
Well, the president's point of view is that what would happen if you didn't have those 600,000 students is that you'd empty them from the top, all the students would go up to better schools, and the bottom 15% of universities and colleges would go out of business in America.
Well, that sounds wonderful, actually.
Yeah.
The bottom 15% of colleges should go bankrupt. So I think the president's thinking here is not that. I think the president is trying to get a macro trade deal where the diplomas and degrees are a small concession for a broader recalibration. But we'll see. Again, he's more than earned a lot of leeway here to be able to negotiate. We don't even know what that is with maybe Taiwanese security and a trade deal. Jeremy, your thoughts here?
Yeah, again, absolutely. I mean, it's just, at the end of the day, you've got to look at President Trump's record, particularly in the second term, which has just been spectacular in my view, and just say, like, do we trust the guy we elected? I obviously do. You obviously do. As you point out, there are so many different things, public and private. He is negotiating essentially the core U.S.-China relationship. And if in the context of that, he has to make some small concession on student visas from what might be ideal from my perspective as an immigration hawk, that's something I can live with if the bigger deal is a good deal for us. And again, I have a lot of confidence that Trump can deliver on that. But, again, having said that, I'm glad people are raising their voices because President Trump and his administration pay a lot of attention to what his supporters are saying, which is not something that's been universal among Republican political leaders. And so the fact that people are raising this as an issue means that we're not going to give it away anything here cheaply. And I think that is nothing but good.
In closing here, Jeremy, tell everybody about the position that you are pending forward if the Senate could get its act together.
Well, we're hopeful, and I'm hearing good things. But have been nominated by the president to be an assistant secretary of state for international organization affairs. That is sort of overseeing the things we do at the UN and some other allied multilateral organizations. And President Trump and Secretary Rubio have put together a terrific team at the State Department, and so hoping that the Senate will be able to move forward. And if confirmed, really looking forward to being able to serve the president in that way.
Jeremy Carl, excellent work. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Charlie. Pleasure to be on.
Thank you. Email us freedom@charliekirk.com. So we're going to see what the end train deal is. I don't think people should get too worked up about this because, as you see, this stuff happens in motion. It's going a million miles a minute. They're going back and forth and back and forth. But a better trade deal, Taiwanese security guarantees. I would say, though, that the graduate student one is one that we should really – that's the one that we need to kind of go – get our sights on. That's the one that we need to probably look at more closely. The undergraduate one, I will say, though, that the argument, if the argument is, hey, this helped us pull off a bigger game-changing trade deal, all for that. But if the argument is like, hey, this is going to help so that a bunch of colleges don't go under, that dog doesn't hunt. Let those colleges have gone under a long time ago. They shouldn't exist in its current form, in their current form. ReliefFactor.com, 100% drug-free Relief Factor, knee pain, back pain, joint pain, elbow pain. You ever been in a bad relationship, you know, the kind that just wears you down? Well, you got to check out Relief Factor. Relief Factor is amazing. With Relief Factor, you can break up with pain just like Anthony did as he writes in. Go to ReliefFactor.com. It's 100% drug-free, and it targets the inflammation that causes pain so you can move better, feel better, and actually enjoy life again. Try the 3-week quick start for just $19.95. Go to ReliefFactor.com or call 800-4RELIEF. Break up with pain and get back to what matters. Go to ReliefFactor.com. That is ReliefFactor.com. Knee pain, back pain, joint pain, elbow pain. So take a look at it right now at ReliefFactor.com. That is ReliefFactor.com. I felt the difference. A lot of people have. Producer Andrew loves Relief Factor. It's a wonderful, wonderful supplement. So check it out right now at ReliefFactor.com. That is ReliefFactor.com. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to our podcast. Open up your podcast application and type in Charlie Kirk Show. And make sure you get your tickets to America Fest. Be right back.